my last. Eve's lamentation is she's going to miss the flowers. At line 287, Michael the angel will say, "Lament not, Eve, but patiently resign that justly thou hast lost, nor set thy heart thus overfond on that which is not thine. Thy going is not lonely. With thee goes thy husband. Him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soil." In other words, the continuation of this idea of the patriarchy. Hey, it's going to be fine. You've got your Adam. You will be fine. The speaking of Adam happens at line 296. And Adam is ready to respond, and he says it at line 307 to 314. "If by prayer incessant I could hope to change the will of him who all things can, I would not cease to weary him with my assiduous cries." Assiduity here meaning never ceasing. "But prayer against his absolute decree no more avails than breath against the wind, blown stifling back on him that breathes it forth. Therefore, to his great bidding, I submit." So Adam will say that he submits. However, interestingly, in the lines to follow, Adam says, the thing I'm going to miss is not the flowers of paradise, Eden. The thing I'm going to miss is the voice of God. That is to say, I'm going to miss being in Eden, where I have the opportunity to be with God. Michael will respond starting at line 334 to make his omnipresence known. God, he will say, is everywhere. Starting at 349, God is, he says, and yet doubt not but in valley and in plain. God is, as here, and will be found alike present, and of his presence many a sign, still following thee, still compressing thee round with goodness and paternal love, his faith express, and of his steps the track divine, which that thou mayest believe and be confirmed ere thou from hence depart. No, I am sent to show thee what shall come in future days, to thee and to thy offspring. Good with bad expect to hear, supernal grace contending with sinfulness of men, thereby to learn true patience. We think about Milton's poem, his sonnet on his blindness, and to temper joy with fear and pious sorrow, equally inured by moderation, either state to bear, prosperous or adverse. This word moderation is going to be huge for us here in a little bit. So shalt thou lead safest thy life, and best prepared, endure thy mortal passage when it comes. Ascend this hill. And then he will say, "Let Eve, for I have drenched her eyes, here sleep below, while thou to foresight wakes, as once thou sleepst when she to life was formed." Line 366 and following. And so let's point out, Michael says, you don't have to worry. God isn't just in Eden. God is everywhere. Eve will sleep at line 367. And at line 370, we've got Milton doing a bit of showing off in his love of mountains. All you have to do is just start reading at lines 370 and following. I've often imagined it that, somebody might say, "Hey, Mom, Milton's showing off again." This ability that he has to just show you just how amazing his learning is. I wish I could read it all. I can't. Let's jump now to line 423. Michael will say, "Adam, now, ope thine eyes, and first behold the effects which thy original crime hath wrought in some to spring from thee, who never touched the accepted tree, nor with the snake conspired, nor sinned thy sin, yet from that sin derive corruption, to bring forth more violent deeds." It will be more violent deeds. That is the vision of the future, starting at line 445. Are you ready for this? Michael, the archangel, shows Adam the picture of what's coming. And of course, what's coming, if you've read the book of Genesis, you know that what's coming is, of course, the death of one of Adam's sons by another one of Adam's sons. Line 445. Whereat he inanely raged Cain, and as they talked, smote him, Abel, into the midriff with a stone that beat out life. He fell, and deadly pale, groaned out his soul with gushing blood effused. Much at that sight was Adam in his heart dismayed. Now, it's key. Adam doesn't actually know what's going on. He just sees the very first murder. Death, in other words, has done his project. "Oh, teacher," Adam will cry. "Oh, teacher, some great mischief hath befallen to that meek man, who well had sacrificed. Is piety thus and pure devotion paid?" Now this great man mantra we're going to come back to over and over again. And Abel will be the first example of a great man who gets jacked in a series of successions. Of course, the penultimate example of that will be Jesus Christ, the Son of God. We'll get to Paradise Regained in a later lecture. Michael comes back at line 453 and says it. He also moved. "These two are brothers, Adam, and to come out of thy loins," they're both your sons, "the unjust, the just hath slain, for envy that his brother's offering found from heaven acceptance." And immediately, as soon as we hear the word envy, we think about Satan, don't we, right? And the way in which envy always seems to lead to terrible kinds of outcomes, right? At line 467, he says it. You're going to see lots of shapes of death. "Death thou hast seen in his first shape on man, but many shapes of death, and many are the ways that lead to this, to his grim cave. All dismal, yet to sense more terrible at the entrance than within. Some, as thou sawest, by violent strokes shall die, by fire, flood, famine. By intemperance more in meats and drinks, which on the earth shall bring diseases dire, of which a monstrous crew before thee shall appear, that thou mayest know what misery the inabstinence of Eve shall bring on men." Line 476, again blaming it on Eve. But hey, let's point out a couple of things here. You remember in our conversations about Plato's Republic that when he was playing that game of the ideal state, he made it a very, very Spartan-like existence. And remember, it was Glaucon that said, well, we've got to add some luxuries. And immediately remember that Plato said, or that Socrates said, right, hey, you know, if we do that, we're going to have doctors because there's going to be intemperance. Remember that one of the four cardinal virtues is discipline or temperance. Milton, of course, knows the game that he's playing here. And the argument that he's going to make is that some of the greatest problems that humans have is born of undiscipline. At line 500, Adam will speak when he realizes just how bad all of this is going to happen. "Oh, miserable mankind, to what fall degraded, to what wretched state reserved. Better end here unborn." This is, of course, a famous philosophic idea, that it's better to have never been born than to have been born into a world of tremendous pain and suffering. Let's keep reading. "Why is life given to be thus wrested from us? Rather, why obtruded on us thus? Who, if we knew, what if we receive, would either not accept life offered or soon beg to lay it down, glad to be so dismissed in peace? Can thus the image of God in man, created once so godly and erect, though faulty sense, to such unsightly sufferings be debased under inhuman pains? Why should not man, retaining still divine similitude in part, from such deformities be free, and for his Maker's image sake exempt?" In other words, he asked the question, why do children have to die of leukemia? Back to an earlier lecture in our conversation about theodicy. It is an important question. Michael's response happens at line 514. "And their Maker's image answered Michael then forsook then, when themselves they vilified to serve ungoverned appetite, and took his image whom they served, a brutish vice, inductive mainly to the sin of Eve." Again, more blaming of Eve. "Therefore, so objected his punishment, disfiguring not God's likeness but their own, or if his likeness by themselves defaced, while they pervert pure nature's healthful rules to loathsome sickness, worthily since they God's image did not reverence in themselves." In other words, it's interesting that he says it. The problem is that humans did not realize in the future, again, this is a future prediction, humans do not realize they have the image of God in them, and therefore you've got all of the terrible things that happen. Adam says it in line 526. I yielded, he says, I understand, just. And again, we're back to this notion of justifying the ways of God to men. Said Adam, and submit. Notice, again, he's saying this, okay, I submit. But is there no other way besides these painful passages, how we may come to death and mixed with our connatural dust? In other words, he says, what's the best way to live your life? Now, this is going to be Milton's and his chance now to be able to give a little bit of information about what it is that makes sense as you live your life. This will be Michael's, Milton's, dare we say it, Aristotle's golden mean, as we've introduced it in another prior lecture. There is, said Michael, if thou wilt well observe the rule of not too much, by temperance taught, in what thou eatest and drinkest, seeking from thence due nourishment, not gluttonous delight, till many years over thy head return. So mayest thou live till, like ripe fruit, thou drop into thy mother's lap, Mother Nature of course, or be with ease gathered, not harshly plucked, for death mature. This is old age. We think of the Ecclesiastes 12 passage, don't we? But then thou must outlive thy youth, thy strength, thy beauty, which will change to withered, weak, and gray. Thy senses then obtuse, all taste of pleasure must forego to what thou hast, and for the year of youth, hopeful and cheerful, in thy blood will reign a melancholy damp of cold and dry to weigh thy spirits down. And last, consume the balm of life. At line 545. Now, we've said this, of course. You were learning, in earlier lectures we've said this, you were learning the truth about what it means to live in this world when you were at the park and you didn't want to leave, and they said, you got to leave. You can't keep swinging, you got to go to the van. I don't want to go to the van. No. You got to go to the van. You can't stay at the park forever. You don't get to do this gig of live on this planet forever. You've not met any 200-year-old people, have you? How to do it well? Well, not too much. A balance. Aristotle called it the golden mean, right? At line 546, then Adam responds, henceforth, he says, I fly not death, nor would prolong life much, bent rather how I may be quit, fairest and easiest of this cumbrous charge, which I must keep till my appointed day of rendering up, and patiently attend my dissolution. Of course, we think about Yeats's Sailing to Byzantium, Part 2, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Adam says, okay, I get it. The next vision will begin at lines 556 and following. We've got some guys who are doing a fine job, minding their own business in their tents, when all of a sudden at line 582, we've got a bevy of fair women, richly gay in gems and wanton dress. To the harp they sung soft amorous ditties, and in dance came on. We have a joke in 303, no dancing is our rule, of course, to play around with this. We think about the crucible line, dancing, you allow dancing. Of course, Milton as a Puritan is going to have serious problems with beautiful women dancing. Adam, at line 498, he likes the party. And he says as much. At line 603, however, Michael will say, judge not what is best by pleasure, though to nature seeming meet, created as thou art to nobler end, holy and pure, conformity divine, these tents, those tents thou sawest so pleasant, were the tents of wickedness, wherein shall dwell his race who slew his brother, in other words, Cain's progeny. Studious they appear of arts that polish life, inventors rare, unmindful of their maker. Now this is, of course, the critique of the artists. We're back to Plato in Book 10 of Republic, and the idea that you got to be careful about artists and, of course, fair, beautiful, dancing girls. At line 614, for that fair female troop thou sawest that seemed of goddesses, so blithe, so smooth, so gay, yet empty of all good wherein consists woman's domestic honor and chief praise, bred only and completed to the task of lustful appetence, to sing, to dance, to dress, and troll the tongue and roll the eye to these that sober race of men whose lives religious titled them the sons of God, blah, blah, blah. Again, we're back to the misogyny of Milton. Beware beautiful women, they are dangerous and all of that, right? Passage will end at 636. We'll continue all these beautiful women shall yield up all their virtue and all their fame ignobly to the trains and to the smiles of these fair, look what he calls these beautiful dancing girls, fair atheists, and now swim in joy ere long to swim at large, and laugh for which the world ere long a world of tears must weep. In other words, you've got to be careful with these beautiful women. Adam responds, short, joy bereft. Oh, at line 628, oh, pity and shame that they who to live well entered so fair should turn aside to tread paths indirect, or in the midway faint. The midway faint is, of course, directly an attribution to this notion at the beginning of Dante's Divine Comedy, in the middle of my life, right? I was lost in a dark wood and all of that. But still I see. Can you believe a line like this? But still I see the tenor of man's woe holds on the same, from woman to began. And he says it. In other words, oh, okay, so we got to blame women again. Interestingly, Michael comes back, though, and he says, no, to instantiate the patriarchy. From man's effeminate slackness it begins. And, of course, the word slackness immediately takes us back to an earlier book where when Eve shows up in book 9 bearing the fruit, right, of the forbidden tree, that Adam's hand goes slack, and he lets go, of course, of the headpiece that he was making of flowers for Eve. Women's slackness, in other words, he says it, men who should better hold their place by wisdom and superior gifts received. This idea, in other words, men have superior gifts. They should run the world. They need to have the strength and tell their women what to do and how to stay in their place. Of course, we read this today, and obviously it's going to be, for us, a challenge to read some of these misogynistic views. The next vision comes in line 638. We'll now go quickly. And this is war. At line 666, interestingly for that line, there's a reference, although not named, to Enoch from Genesis 5:21 through 24. A man who was a good man and never died was taken up to God. At line 681, we've got the one just man mantra that we're going to see over and over again. At line 681 or so, the idea of the one just man who is going to walk with God, the man who is going to stand up and is going to be a good man for God. Of course, we think about at line 681 and then 712 this idea that there's a good guy who can stand up and against all the evil that is happening. Think of it. That is Abdiel earlier in our poem. Now it's Enoch, and soon it will be Noah. And of course, the real question is it Milton, maybe even himself, right? Who is that one just man? At line 712, we have the introduction of Noah and the ark. We should point out that, of course, Milton didn't know anything yet about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of the flood. You can Google that one on your own, but we're going to have now the story of Noah and the flood. At line 756, Adam will say, "Thee another flood of tears and sorrow," playing off of the word flood. A father will mourn the loss of his children. And then at line 763, ignorance, he says, might have been better. Visions ill foreseen. Better I had lived ignorant of future, so had borne my part of evil only, each day's lot enough to bear. In other words, it would have been better to never see the future than to see the future and have to live with what it is that I know is coming. The next set of lines for us at 763, he continues, "Those now were dispensed, the burden of many ages to me lighted once by my foreknowledge gaining birth, abortive to torment me, ere their being with thought that they must be. Let no man seek henceforth to be foretold what shall befall him or his children. Evil, he may be sure, which neither his foreknowing can prevent, and the future evils shall no less in apprehension than in substance feel grievous to bear. But that care now is past, man is not whom to warn. Those few who escaped famine and anguish will at last consume, wandering that watery desert. I had hoped when violence was ceased, and war on earth, all would have then gone well. Peace would have crowned with length of happy days the race of man. But I was far deceived. For now I see peace to corrupt no less than war to waste. In other words, he says it, there will be never any peace. This has, of course, always been a subject of huge debate in our philosophy classes. Is it ever possible to imagine a world where there would be peace? Well, here, not so much. At line 787, Michael will give his famous warning that picks up at line 793. Fame, he says, and those who want fame in the world, high titles and rich prey, all of it bad news, shall change their course to pleasure, ease, and sloth, surfeit and lust, till wantonness and pride rise out of friendship, hostile deeds in peace. In other words, he says it, there is this sounding very much like the lines from Beowulf Part 2, when Hrothgar speaks about, when you get all you want, you can easily begin to give in to pride. The conquered also and the enslaved by war shall with their freedom lost all virtue lose, and fear of God. In other words, he's telling the future, from whom their piety feigned in sharp contrast of battle found no aid against invaders. Therefore, cooled in zeal, therefore, thenceforth shall practice how to live secure, worldly or desolate, on what their Lord shall leave them to enjoy. For the earth shall bear more than enough, that temperance may be tried, so all shall turn degenerate, all depraved, justice and temperance, truth and faith forgot. The only sin is to forget, we've said in other lectures. One man except, and again this is back to that one-man theory, the only son of light in a dark age, against example good, against allurement, custom, and a world offended. In other words, the one-man theory, just one just man is all it takes, and in this case, of course,